Hey everyone, it's Sean. In today's demonstration, I'm going to be walking you through how to create a double exposure effect in Photoshop. This is a really cool effect because it allows you to really play around with model shots and environment shots, colors, black and white, you name it, to really create your own tailored effect. We'll be using layer masks and some adjustment layers to achieve this as well. So if you guys want to open up the double exposures demo folder I've provided you, there's a Z final. This is my final project folder or file, but we're going to be building this from scratch. So if we want to take this model JPEG and just drag it over top of Photoshop to open the file, we can get going. Okay, so we have the file here. Sorry, I just accidentally brushed on something and it's gone. Okay, great. The first thing we need to do is make our selection of our guy. So to do that, I'm just going to zoom in by hitting Command+ on the keyboard and taking my pen tool and sort of going around the outside of him. I know this is something that we do a lot, but practice makes perfect, and it's something that you'll be doing quite frequently if you work in Photoshop a lot. So it's a good skill to have, and it's only going to get better over time by continuously sort of cutting people out and learning the sort of ins and outs of how to do it effectively. So I just messed up back here. So basically, I'm just going around roughly, not being super precise because we'll be able to fix it in our Refine Edge tool. So, you know, just sort of loosely go around him. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Again, like I've said in previous videos, I'm using an Intuos tablet. So I have one of those pen tablet things, similar to like the Apple Pen and the iPad Pro. It just speeds things up nicely. So once you have your selection with the pen tool, something that I want to point out, usually we'd hit right click and you just hit make selection. The cool thing about using the pen tool is if we come over to our layers panel, there's this section here called paths. And what the pen tool does is it creates a working path. And this will stay here for the duration of your document. And it's just a nice sort of way to be able to go and recreate this path or reselect this area without having to do it from scratch every time. So you can either right click and hit make selection. You can command click on this path icon and it will turn it into a selection, or you can right click on the work path and hit make selection. There's always 3 different ways to do everything in Adobe, and it's just a really cool way to go about things. So I went ahead and I made my selection, and now what we want to do is switch over to the lasso tool, L on your keyboard, or the lasso tool on the left-hand toolbar, and we'll hit select and mask. I'll leave you guys to go ahead and refine your mask so that it's just tight to him and you're not getting any of the white background. So when you guys are finished that, you know, feel free to meet me in the next section. I'm going to pause because it takes me forever to do this and record a video at the same time. So I'll meet you there. All right, so I have my selection. It's good to go now. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And what you want to do is you would like to layer via copy to create a new version of your model. And when you create that new version, ideally you would label the layer as model. This will just sort of help to curb any confusion that might happen later on as we're building our document. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to import our mountain imagery, and this will serve as the basis for our double exposure. So if you just go into the project file and click and drag in the mountain imagery, when it loads in Photoshop, you can just scale it proportionally using Alt Option on your keyboard until it fills the frame. And what we want to sort of take into consideration is where the most amount of action is happening in our photograph. We want that section to be over top of our model because it'll create the most dynamic features. So in this case, what I want to do is right click and hit flip horizontally so that it flips our image horizontally and all of our detail and information is sort of on the other side of the page. We can go ahead and hit enter to place and sort of wait for Photoshop to do its math. Lovely. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a clipping mask, or sorry, a mask for our mountains based off of the shape of our model. So we can just command click on the image palette icon there so that we get our selection of our model. And with our mountain layer selected, we can just create a new mask using our mask tool down here. And now our mountains are in a relatively good place to sort of work with. If you don't really agree with the placement though, if you want to adjust a scale or placement, what you can do is you can uncheck this chain icon and it will unlink the two. To sort of show you what I mean, if this chain is checked on and you go to move this layer, the mask and the imagery move together in unison. If this is unchecked and you go to move the imagery within this layer, the imagery moves separate of it will move separately of the mask, which is kind of a cool detail to sort of keep in mind, because quite frequently you do need to actually uncheck these things to achieve the desired results you want. In this case, I actually want my mountains to be even larger, so I'm just going to scale it up a little bit more and reposition my elements sort of like that. I think that looks okay there. But again, as we move through this, you guys will find what you like and what you think works best. Okay, sorry, I keep bouncing up this color balance window. So the next step that we're going to do is we are going to duplicate our model layer down here by hitting Command J on your keyboard, or you can click and drag it down to the new layer icon on the bottom right there. We're going to drag this to the top of the stack, and we need to create a black and white version of this. So you can either create a black and white adjustment layer here, and then by holding Alt Option on your keyboard, create a clipping mask so that the black and white filter is only affecting the model copy. That's totally fine. You can go about doing it that way. What I prefer to do is create a smart object. So I'm right clicking on the layer and hitting Convert to Smart Object. Photoshop's taking its time to figure it out. And then using the shortcut on your keyboard, Command, Alt, Option, Shift, and B, I can create a black and white smart filter. The reason why I prefer to do it this way is just because personally I find the less extra layers floating around in your layers panel, the easier it is to understand what's going on. And again, because we're used to doing non-destructive editing, this is a filter that you can turn on and off and fully customize as well. So after this, the next step that we have to do is we have to apply a layer mask. So by coming down here and hitting layer mask. The next thing that we have to do, I believe, is change the blending mode. Let me just double check with the example for a second. Yes, so you can see in our example, the blending mode here is set to multiply. And what that will do is it will eliminate any of the white sort of information in this layer. So you can sort of see there's like white in his jacket, on his neck, sort of his forehead, things like that. And it will only leave the like inky sort of dark black tones, which is great. That's really what we're looking for. And with this layer mask selected and your brush selected, B key on your keyboard or brush over here with the color black in your foreground, what we're going to do is we're going to brush away everything for this gentleman except for his facial features. Those are sort of the only thing that we want to leave. So make sure you have an opacity set at a relatively high amount, something maybe like 85 will do, and we can go in and make some small changes as we go along, but for now I'm just going to start brushing in and getting rid of everything that isn't a facial feature. Also, I should say, because of the recording software that I'm using, my computer is going to slow down a bit. So I might pause and do some small editing and sort of fill you guys in on what I did, just for the sake of speed and, you know, having a shorter video this time. So I will go ahead and make those adjustments, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. All right, so I've already kind of encountered a couple of problems. One, I don't love the placement that I chose. I thought it was going to work, but it's not quite doing it for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mountain layer a little bit so that I'm getting a different POV sort of texture happening within him here. Just bear with me while I take a peek at the example again one more time. So we can sort of see we have the mountain ridge going up his jawline and two trees within his body. I have a feeling I need to actually shrink down the size and scale of my texture here and sort of just shift it over a little bit more. Maybe just scale it down even more. Again, it's all about playing around, right? So whatever you guys think works best tends to be, the best solution. Okay, cool. So if you guys want to bring out a little bit more detail of some of his features, like I, for example, really like seeing his ear. I think it helps to give a little bit of context to what it is we're actually looking at. You can switch between the white and black color palettes and sort of brush on and remove certain aspects of his facial features, right? So for me, kind of seeing a bit of his chin strap, whoop, that's a little bit too heavy. Seeing a bit of his chin strap, seeing a bit of his ear and stuff like that sort of helps to give context to his face. And what I'm kind of doing is I'm just changing opacity of my brushes to be lighter brushes so that I can sort of control the amount of information that the person is seeing. So if you guys sort of happen to paint over too much of his face and obscure too much of it, you can switch over to the white color and just again using your opacity up here to sort of affect how much detail you're sort of showing at one time. That's a good technique to sort of get in the habit of doing. That's the beauty of using a mask, is it really does become very easy to make all these adjustments and whatnot. Now, if yours is like mine and you're sort of seeing this awkward sort of colors showing up, like these harsh lines and stuff like that, that's probably because of the background underneath. If we remove that, which we will in a minute, you'll sort of see all of those go away. So don't be too concerned with the edges because we're going to go in and sort of make those adjustments. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with this. The next thing we're going to do is we need to create a actual background, a proper background color. Right now it's these cool grayish tones from the original image, and our mountains have these nice warm creamy notes to it. So we want to match that better. To make a solid background, you can either create a new background layer and using I on the keyboard and selecting this creamy color, and then using X to send it to the background and Command Delete to fill the background. You can do it that way. It's a little bit more keystrokes, but it'll get the job done. The other thing you could do is come down to the bottom of our layers panel under adjustment layer, click on solid color. Solid color does a really great job because not only is this an adjustable layer, it's an adjustment layer, meaning it's non-destructive, so you can go back and change the color at any point. You still get the full customization. So I'm just going to click on the creamy sort of note somewhere that I like. As long as it's within this range, that's kind of fine. So there we have it, a nice solid color. And while this might work, it needs that one little detail to sort of sell it and push it even further. That detail is going to be the mountain texture one more time. So in our double exposure demo folder, I'm going to grab the mountain file again, and I'm going to click and drag it back into Photoshop. And then I'm going to proportionally scale it up so that it fills the frame, like so. And the trick to this is subtlety. So what you want to do is you want to take it from 100% opacity down to maybe something like 20%. Might even be able to get away with 15, to be honest. 15%. There we go. Yeah, that looks nice. And if you wanted to, you could change the blending mode. You can play around with different blending styles. Darker color might, any of the sort of things within the multiply section might work nicely. They might give you that sort of nice inky effect that you're looking for. In this case, I don't mind linear burn, seems to work nicely. And if you wanted to as well, and if you don't feel like having a perfectly in focus background, what we can do is we can actually apply a blur to this. The blur can either help to create a sense of depth of field. So if you wanted just a depth of field, you could apply something like a 10 pixel blur to it, and you can sort of see it softens the background even more. But if you wanted to just go for like color differential within the background, something really abstract, you could beef this up to like 250 pixels. Come on, Photoshop. It's funny, it really does not like having to work with my screen recording and then be in here at all. So you could beef it up to 250 pixels, hit OK when you're ready and good to go. Actually, 250 might have been way too much, to be honest, but I kind of can't tell now because my Photoshop's locking up. So just give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. And we're back. Okay. So again, because this was a smart object, we have the ability to go in and change the blur, which is really great. So just by double clicking on the smart filter Gaussian blur, it'll bring the blur menu back up, and we can start to affect a bit of a change in the amount of blur that we have going on. So again, you can sort of see that the more you get it, the more sort of just blobular, and just creating some color difference seems to just help to fill the background up a little bit. So, you know, nice little technique there. And again, because this is a smart object, if you decide that you actually don't even like this effect, you can just turn off the smart filter and it removes the blur and life goes back to normal again and everything's lovely. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is creating a double exposure effect in Photoshop using adjustment layers, layer masks, and blending modes. I hope you guys find this useful. Maybe it gives you an idea for a project or two that you're working on, and you know, just helps to sort of inspire those Photoshop techniques and to keep exploring. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.